when I'm able to in a Zoom meeting, right? Like get to have
your screen.
Good morning, colleagues. Good morning to all our participants, and we're so grateful for this
overwhelming subscription that we've received on the NEF Business Television, and our speakers are already online. We're counting down the clock in earnest to go live at 11 o'clock. Just to give you a sense of the appetite that we've seen, primarily about people who had always aspired to either own a petrol station or to be a service and supplier in the value chain of the fuel sector. We oversubscribed by almost 2,000 applicants and members that have shown interest in the sector. And we're primarily grateful to our stakeholders who have taken time out of their busy schedule to engage with us for the next 2 hours and iron out issues around the policy framework, the ring-fenced finances, primarily for Black economic participation and Black economic inclusion, and where the opportunities reside. Deal with the frustrations, of course, of the bureaucratic system and the nature of the governance that we have under the shareholder ministry of the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition. And we also have in this sector, the regulator and the Ministry of Energy. We have representatives from the retail association sector, and not in any particular order, but we also have oil majors, the National Empowerment Fund as a funder with a soul. And as we mentioned, we will go live in earnest at 11 o'clock. So to all our speakers, just checking if you can hear me loud and clear, and that you are able to stay with us for the duration of this webinar to take questions and answers, some of whom we've already received even in a chat platform, where people typically would say, what do you do to expedite the process of owning a fuel station? What are the requirements? What do I need to ensure that I have in place as an entrepreneur? Firstly, the fact that you need to have a blueprint or a desire. I know at the National Empowerment Fund, the emphasis is always on self-mastery, using your intellectual faculties, making sure that the desired area that you want to participate in is one that you're well averse with, that you have the acumen, the discipline, and characteristics to sustain your business. So having dealt with all of that, we have our fund manager who's responsible for SME funding, Aldine Govender, who will join us and essentially talk about how the funder with a soul has traversed with our investees throughout the journey of their entrepreneurial experience. To hold your hand, there's mentorship, investee training. Aldine, not to take away from your shine, or to take away from your content and presentation. But essentially, we live the values that we espouse as the National Empowerment Fund, that of empowerment, of motivation, holding the highest ethics, to be motivated, to have respect and integrity. And so all of that permeates in our engagements as well with our investees, with our colleagues, our strategic partners, and the various governments. We have third-party funding, for example, and government departments ranging from municipalities and the various sectors as well. So with that said, folks, let me not take away from the actual program, which resumes at 11 o'clock sharp. This is essentially a meet and greet, and to make you all feel comfortable to engage with us on social media. I did mention that we oversubscribed on the Zoom platform, so we have also facilitated the overflow facilities on social media. So the Facebook link is currently on. It's the National Empowerment Fund on Facebook, the National Empowerment Fund. If you'll follow us there, share your comments. On Instagram, it's the NEF Core, that's NEFCORP, and that's the same handle on Twitter as well. So my name is Cindy Mabi, and I have the privilege of being your host this morning. So do stay tuned as we commence our program in earnest. Ngiyabonga. Good morning and a very warm welcome to you. Dumelang, Tobela, Absheni, Dimacheroni. Good morning and goeiemorgen. Thank you so much for joining us here on NEF Business TV. NEF, the National Empowerment Fund, Growing Black Economic Participation. We're extremely excited to have you. Earlier on, just before we went live, we mentioned that we oversubscribed by over 2,000 participants, showing how lucrative this sector is in creating opportunities for entrepreneurs who dare to dream and also reach out for those opportunities. Thank you again for joining us. I have the enviable job and I'm very excited and privileged to be your host. My name is Cindy Mabi. We have invited key players in the petroleum sector from the Department of Energy, the oil majors, the National Empowerment Fund, who is our host, and the retail association sector, the dealer councils, our investees, and you, our most valuable viewer and participant. Thank you so much for joining us. So as we commence, just to give you a sense of what you can expect, we'll deal with issues of policy, funding criteria, what you need to do as an entrepreneur to position yourself to access those opportunities, and the finances that has been ring-fenced. So please post your questions in the chat room for those who are on the Zoom platform. Otherwise, you're also welcome to engage with us on social media. On Facebook, it's the National Empowerment Fund. On Instagram, it's at NEF Core, that's NEF CORP, including Instagram, etc. We are recording this session, which will be available as a video on demand. So again, please post your questions when you are ready. Now, to kick us off here on NEF Business TV, we have the fund manager for Imbewu, and she's responsible for SME funding, Aldine Govender. Thank you so much for joining us. As I've acknowledged all the other participants, we are grateful that you all could make it. Aldine, your presentation starts in 10 minutes, but just as an icebreaker, some of the requests that we've received are for job seekers in the fuel sector. And we know that entrepreneurs are the bedrock of creating much needed employment, especially under COVID-19, now with alert level 1 having eased economic activity. But we are sensitive to the fact that many people are desperate for employment to provide for their family.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you are all well and keeping safe on this Thursday morning. This session is really about sharing information. So grab your cup of coffee and a notebook while you listen to the presentations. I am going to give you a quick overview of who we are and what we do, and then I will focus on service station funding. Just give me a few moments while I'm loading the presentation.
Aldine, I beg your pardon, not to interrupt you. I see we weren't seeing your presentation earlier. There we go. Thank you so much. Please proceed.
Thank you. So just to give you an overview of the NEF mandate, we were established by the National Empowerment Fund Act, number 105 of 1998. We're an agency of the NIC, and we're a driver and thought leader in promoting and facilitating Black economic participation through the provision of financial and non-financial support to Black-owned and managed businesses, as well as by promoting a culture of savings and investment among Black people. And by the way, we are the only DFI exclusively mandated to grow triple BE. We fund across all the sectors of the economy from 250,000 Rand to 75 million Rand. So to date, the NEF approved 1,058 transactions worth more than 10.6 billion across the country. And over 7 billion has been disbursed to these companies since inception. We've secured clean external audit opinions for 17 years running. And since inception, we've created 101,000 jobs, of which over 68,000 jobs were new. We have also supported 24 strategic and industrial projects with 12.5 billion, with the potential to support over 52,000 jobs. 75% of the transactions are at an advanced development stage. And since inception in the sector, we have created 3,600 job opportunities. We also promote a culture of savings and investment as the NEF. If you remember the Assange share scheme that we've made available a few years ago, with more than 12 million end-to-end shares. We've also provided investor education. We've reached approximately 87,632 people in villages and townships through 322 community seminars. We have trained 3,808 potential entrepreneurs who attended 398 seminars from 2012 to date. The NEF also has a national footprint. We've got regional offices in all the provinces. I will share the contact details with you at the end of the presentation. And interestingly, we have secured 70% of the number of approved transactions from our regional offices. We've also collected over 3.7 billion to date from our investees that repaid us. Just a quick example of some of the sectors that we funded. We've invested about 900 million in developing projects with a total of 5 operational businesses that have created over 3,600 jobs. And we've leveraged over 4 billion of third-party funding to create new manufacturing and industrial capacity alongside local and international partners. We've invested over 1.6 billion by supporting 454 small and medium enterprises in the SMME space. Then in the township and rural economy space, the NEF disbursed over 2.1 billion in support of entities in rural and township economies. And these entities will vary from property businesses like your shopping malls, the petroleum sector where we funded service stations, and businesses that operate in the tourism sector. In the property sector, the NEF has approved over 372 million to contribute to the transformation in the sector. In this past year alone, the NEF approved approximately 150 million in the sector, leveraging close to 600 million in third-party funding. In the tourism sector, we've disbursed over 251 million. And we continue to invest in community-owned hotels and lodges to drive the growth of the tourism sector. So this one example will be the Graskop Gorge Lift, which is a flagship project that will drive tourism development in the panorama tourist route in Mpumalanga. And it's also the first of its kind in Africa. So I'll encourage you to visit the Gorge Lift in Mpumalanga. It's really something special to see. We've also invested over 272 million in the affordable housing sector. And in the agro-processing sector, we've invested over 316 million in the sector. So investments in the sector will include, as an example, processing of castor oil, fruit juices, and condiments. And in the energy sector, the service station sector, we've invested over 885 million countrywide, 40% of which are owned and managed by Black women, which we are very proud of. So there's mainly four funds within the NEF: the Umnotho Fund, the Imbewu Fund, the Strategic Projects Fund, and the Rural and Community Development Fund. I will quickly take you through the product offerings. So the Umnotho Fund will provides capital for expansion of businesses and the buying of shares in white-owned businesses, or what we call your BEE deals. And they also provide funding for new ventures or startups. And the products that they offer is acquisition finance to buy businesses, new venture finance, so that's for your startup. That's your startup capital. They provide expansion finance for existing businesses. A capital markets product. It's a product that assists Black businesses to list on the JSE. They also provide liquidity and warehousing. And that's a product that assists BEE shareholders who need to sell a portion of all their shares, or all their shares. So what the NEF will do, we will acquire the shares and warehouse it temporarily before these shares will be unsold to new BEE shareholders. Then, in terms of the offering at the Imbewu Fund, we support startup businesses and also provide capital for the expansion of small enterprises. We've got three products: franchise financing. So service station funding will fall under the franchise financing product. And how this product works, and maybe just to take you through the main requirements, you must be pre-approved by the franchisor first before you approach the NEF for funding. Then what we do, we assess your application for commercial viability. Our funding is structured over a 5-year term, maximum 7 years, at a prime-linked interest rate. So in a nutshell, that's how we do it. I'll give you further details later on. And then we've also got a procurement finance product. This product was designed to assist entrepreneurs who secured purchase orders or contracts to execute those contracts or purchase orders. So we typically fund the project over the duration of the contract or the purchase order, also at prime-linked interest rates. And we provide asset finance, or working capital finance, or bridging finance to entrepreneurs that needs the funding to execute those contracts or purchase orders. Then the third product that we offer is entrepreneurship funding. This is really capital for expansion or startup businesses that are not franchises or that do not have contracts, and we fund businesses across all the sectors as mentioned earlier. And our funding ranges from 250,000 Rand to 15 million. Then we've got a Strategic Projects Fund who fund the development of early stage projects or new sector industries that have been built from the ground up. So they provide venture
capital funding structures, and they fund up to 75 million. And we also have a rural and community development fund, which supports the development and growth of the rural economy in rural communities. And this is normally achieved by the mobilization of structures such as cooperatives. So in this fund, they provide startup capital or new ventures capital. They also do business acquisition finance and expansion capital. And the funding ranges between 1 million to 50 million in this fund. Then we have a women empowerment fund. So this fund really spreads across all the other 4 funds that I've just mentioned. And within this fund, we support businesses that are more than 50% owned and managed by Black women. And funding ranges from 250,000 Rand to 75 million. So that's just this is really just to give you an overview of what we do as the NEF. So now I'll just move over to service station funding. So in this slide, you will see all the stakeholders in the energy sector, the Department of Energy, the Fuel Retailers Association, and your 6 oil majors. Most of them are here today, so I will encourage you to stay connected until the end of the session to get the expert advice. But I also want to mention to you is that the NEF has entered into cooperation agreements with some of these oil majors to promote transformation in the energy sector on a national level. And then to take you through the investment criteria of the NEF. So when we consider an application, there is something called the empowerment dividend that we also assess within the application. So we will look at the BBBE, the ownership, management control, and employment equity within the business. We look at Black women empowerment, job creation. We look at whether we're funding a sector that is growing, the geographic spread, which means where is the business located, because we want to reach economically depressed areas within the country. And then we look at the investment return. That's what we consider when we assess an application. So the advantages of franchising, we all know that if you're a first-time entrepreneur, it's always easier to invest in a franchise business because you're investing in an established brand with a track record, which typically minimizes the risk of failure of the business. And one of the other advantages of franchising is the support that's being offered by the franchisor. So the franchisor will provide support in the form of training, marketing, operational systems, and general entrepreneurial support, which you might require. Support will also include funding and enterprise development and supplier development programs that you can form part of. And then the agreements that we have entered into with the oil majors, which I mentioned earlier, it was really done with the intent to transform the sector, and especially with focus on women empowerment. So I want to share some of the statistics from our portfolio. So in our entire portfolio, service stations rank as the most vibrant and successful businesses, both commercially and in terms of the repayment trends to the NEF. We have invested over 885 million rand in the service station sector. We funded over 110 fuel stations to date and supported 3,473 jobs. And of our investments, 31% have exited successfully, which means they've repaid us in full. And 44% of our investments are owned by women in the sector. We've also agreed to a risk-sharing model with the oil majors in terms of the cooperation agreements that we've entered into, which really shows the commitment to transforming the sector. And I just want to share a few interesting facts about the industry with you. So the service station sector contributes 6% to the South African gross domestic product. The sector also provides more than 100,000 direct and indirect jobs, and estimates indicate that over 70,000 jobs are provided by fuel retail stations. So in South Africa, there are almost 6,000 fuel stations, cover the country's 1.2 million square kilometers, with a combined annual turnover of approximately 220 billion rand. And then, as we all know, I'm sure, the petrol and diesel consumption in South Africa exceeds refinery capacity production, since we can only refine 700,000 barrels per day. So therefore, we have seen over the past 17 to 20 years that we are importing a total of nearly 8 billion liters of fuel. That was the statistics as at 2018. And interestingly, just a quick stat, there's over 10 million cars on South African roads. According to 2019 industry report, we've seen that India is the market leader in the number of retail fuel stations owned, with 1,897 sites. That could be more by now, as this was the stats that we've extracted from last year's industry report. And then it's followed by Caltex with 845 sites, Shell with 615 sites, BP with 558 sites, Total with 547 sites, and Sasol with 400 sites. Sasol is also the world's leading coal chemicals firm and is becoming a major international petrochemical and fuel player. So I just wanted to share those few facts with you about the industry, but I wanted to get a little bit technical now, because when you buy a service station or any business for that matter, we all know that buying at the right price is key for the success of the business. Because if you overpay, you will not get a return on your investment. So you might see a service station being advertised on the internet or on an oil major's website, and then you will ask for the financial statement from a buyer because you want to buy the service station to assess, the financial performance of the business. So once you apply to NEF for funding, what I want to share with you is how we will test whether the purchase price is actually reasonable, because that is key if you want to buy a service station. So what I'm illustrating here is just a fictitious example of how we will do our valuation. So the valuation methodology is really based on a monthly EBITDA multiple of normally between 30 and 36 for a service station. So you will see, we will look at the average volumes that the site pumped for the past 3 years, and then work out the gross profit margin in the forecourt. So it also depends what your RAS margin is. So in 2017, the RAS margin, the average RAS margin for the year was R1.76 per litre for fuel for petrol and R1.24 for a litre of diesel. And in 2018, the RAS margin increased to R1.87 on average for the year and R1.40. And in 2019, you will also see that the margin increased. So what we work out your average monthly gross profit margin over the past 3 years of the site. We also look at C-store turnovers. We know that the gross profit margins typically range from 25% to 30%. In this example, I've used 28%. If you have a car wash, your gross profit margin is normally around 80%. And once you've done this calculation and you get your average monthly gross profit over the past 3 years, what we do is we apply an operating expenses margin to gross profit margin because we've done an exercise on our existing portfolio, and we've seen that service stations, their expenses typically range from 70% to 80% of gross profit margin. So you deduct the gross profit margin, then you will get a net profit before interest and tax. If you apply a 36 multiple, which is the norm in the industry, your purchase price in this example will range between 6.6 million to 10 million. And if you look at the mid-range, it's about 8.3 million for this specific site, as illustrated in this example. So that is the type of assessment that we will do, because we want to ensure that you don't overpay for a service station. And we know that, sellers would always want more for their service station, for their service stations. And in some instances, we will assist you to negotiate the price to a reasonable level. That's what we do as the NEF. I don't have much time. I've only got 10 minutes. So I try to keep the presentation as brief as possible. But what I want to quickly touch on is the lessons that we've learned in the industry. Location is key for the success of a service station. So you really have to look at the traffic volume around the site and the proximity to the major routes to ensure that you're buying a good, viable site. And interestingly, what we found is that during the lockdown, service stations that are located in townships seem to perform very well as compared to the ones in the suburbs. In terms of the performance of the sites that pump 300,000 liters of fuel and above are normally viable sites, and they do not face any cash flow constraints. We've also done exercise on our existing portfolio to test the break-even of the site, and that is what we found. If you are looking out for a service station, make sure that that you acquire a service station that pumps at least 300,000 liters of fuel. And then I want to share some of the reasons for underperformance of service stations. So after you acquire a site, you know, there's a few things that you need to consider. Actually, before you acquire the site, you need to understand whether there's new competitors that will enter that market. Because if they are going to enter the market, you know, it's definitely going to affect the site. The other issue that we've picked up is that where a service station has commercial or account customers, normally after the acquisition, when a new owner takes over, the site will lose those account customers. So when you look at the purchase price of a service station, you have to actually discount price by the value that commercial and account customers contribute to the site. And then you have to be careful around dilapidated sites. We've also seen that those sites struggle. And the sites that also struggle, we've noticed that they don't have adequate financial management systems in place, and they are based in a very poor location. So I have come to the end of my presentation, Cindy. Thank you for your attention. I've listed the contact details of our regional offices on this slide. I'm handing over to you. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you so much, Aldine. Really appreciate it. That's Aldine Govender. She's the Imbewu Fund Manager responsible for small, medium enterprise funding. The presentation itself on my side, we could see the slides, but we are aware that we had a challenge with your audio, which was intermittent. So at some points we could hear you well, and at other points you weren't so clear. And we do apologize to our participants and speakers, because as much as we rely on technology, we also have to make room for a margin of error. We'll make sure that this presentation and the podcast is loaded on the NEF website. That's NEF Corp, and that's nefcorp.co.za. Aldine, before you go, there was a question, and not to take away from the seminar or the webinar, which is on the fuel sector, but we have Dumi Musime who says, does the NEF also fund poultry farming?
Yes, we do. So Tumi can contact me directly as well. I'll give him my email address, just to give you more details. So it's governor@nefcorp.co.za.
So that's governor@nefcorp.co.za. Much appreciated for your time. It is as you heard from our previous speaker, that this is a sector, especially franchising, which has got a mitigated risk because of the relationship. It's a standardized operation, and funders or financiers are more inclined to go with this particular model as it is safer and there is a higher rate of success. Now, our next speaker is from the Department of Energy, who will be speaking on the petroleum licensing sector in particular, or segment. Please help me welcome Paul Nkomo. Thank you so much for your time, Paul. We hope you're well, and that you'd be able to field the various questions we have on social media.
Okay, great.
Paul, are you with us? Can you hear me? Hi, I'm Paul. The joys of live television, as we say. Hey, this is NEF Business TV. So if you're with us on the Overflow platform and social media, please join us. We are acutely aware that there has been some challenges based on the numbers, essentially, on where people could not log in. So I've personally shared on the WhatsApp group. We'll go on our Facebook page as well, where you can find the link.
Hello?
Paul, are you ready?
Hello?
Hi, I'm Paul.
Yes, yeah.
Are you ready? Please introduce your discussion or your topic, and especially when it comes to the licensing requirements of petroleum, the role of the Department of Energy as a regulator and the authority that extends or can terminate licenses and also determine the building and establishment of petrol stations. It's over to you. Hi, Paul. All right, in the absence
Hi,
of...
Cindy, can you hear me?
Oh, there you are. How are you? We almost wanted to send a search and rescue team to find
I'm
you.
well, Cindy. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you. Thank you for joining us, Paul. Please go ahead. Introduce your topic, your designation, what you do in licensing, and how it all works. Thank you.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm hoping that you can hear me. I'm about to share my screen.
Oh, there we go. Thank you very much. We can hear you. Go ahead.
All right. Okay, give me a second, Cindy, while I try and upload my presentation, please. And then I'll be with you.
Paul, this is what we call ad-libbing. I know that you said to give you a moment, but in the interest of our viewers as well, we are not allowed. It is criminal. It's an unforgivable sin to have dead air. So I'm glad we can see your presentation now. If I may request that you speak closely to the microphone and go ahead.
You can
Thank
see it.
you.
Okay. Okay, good morning, everyone. You're speaking to Mpho Nkomo. I'm from the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. I know that my presentation says energy, but we are now the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. And I'm going to take you through my presentation, which is on petroleum licensing, what we look for when we are licensed, the requirements of the law, which you will require to actually become licensed. Okay, so my outline will talk you through the licensing objectives, which means why are we here? Why do we license? Supporting documents you require to acquire a license. Our main licensing considerations when we license you. Main analysis considerations, the challenges that we encounter while we process your license applications. So our objectives, that'll be promoting an efficient manufacturing, wholesaling, and retailing petroleum industry. So we have 3 different licenses. One to manufacture, that is where if you want a plant to refine product, or wholesaling licenses. This will be your suppliers of petroleum products, and your retailing petroleum industry. That will be the
Hi, Paul. My apologies, folks and fellow South Africans and participants on various platforms. We do seem to be struggling with the quality of the audio. So, Paul, just on the second slide on the regulation or requirements for licensing, we missed you there. So I don't know whether it is the network on your side, whether you're able to find a maybe higher ground where we can have a better reception, but please pick up from your previous slide. Thank you.
okay. So promoting access to affordable petroleum. There we are looking at getting product to where it is needed. Supporting documents for license applications. So for all our applications, we will be requiring business registration documents. And for a retail application, we will look at an NPV assumptions that you will provide to us. That'll be where we look at whether or not this business will be feasible. And a business plan where you explain to us for all license types, where you explain to us what your business is about, who are you targeting, and what do you project to, if you are retail, to pump, and if you are wholesale, what are you expecting to supply to? How much volume do you expect to supply to your customers? For a site or and a manufacturing application, we also would require a title deed so that we know that the facility that you have is on the land that you own. So we will also check ownership, and we will check that you have all the requisites.
My apologies again to interject, but could you please share your screen? We had your presentation earlier on, and if you can just keep that. At the moment, we just have your name on the screen. So if you'll please share your screen in wide or full mode. Thank you.
Ask him to.
Paul, I think we're going to have to navigate and figure this out as we go along. So on my side, I see you've muted your audio and the picture. So you please unmute both and then share your presentation in full screen view. So if you can hear me, please unmute, and hopefully we'll be able to go through the presentation. But what I've, there we go. There we go. I can hear you now, and then just your video,
Right.
and then we need the
Can you see the screen?
presentation to be shared. Please share your screen and the presentation in full screen mode.
Here we go.
Perfect. Thank you.
All righty. I'll continue. So environmental authorization, that is if you are going to have a site or a manufacturing facility, there you will need to get all the authorization from the Department of Environmental Affairs, where they will authorize whatever you plan on doing on that piece of land. So if it's going to be a site, they will authorize you to have the tankers that you, the tankerage that you would want to have. And if it's going to rise the capacity and the land and everything that you want to do on that particular piece of land. You will also need a zoning certificate where they zone it either for us for retailing activity or for your manufacturing. If it's a site that is a new, completely new site that you are going to be building, we will also require a traffic count where we will see the traffic that passes that site and whether or not, if we have a site there, it'll be feasible. A deed of sale, if this only applies for a site that is changing hands or a site or a retail site that you are buying from somebody else, here we will need to see that the site was indeed sold and for how much it was sold. If you're going to be retailing, we require a supply agreement from your retailer or your wholesaler or where you will be procuring your product. Procurement plan will be applicable for a wholesale and a manufacturing. Here we want to see where you will be getting your products from. And by product, this is everything excluding your petroleum products, where we'll be looking at if you are having a wholesale, for example, if you will have an office, all the equipment that you need in your office, where will you be procuring it from? Are you getting this from black suppliers? And for manufacturing, similarly, if you're going to have that facility, any other thing that you're going to be required, say cleaning services, say procuring this, preferably from black suppliers. We will also be needing proof of funding. This is where institutions like your NEF will come in, where we will look at, do you have the funding to get into this new venture that you're trying to get into? Okay, our main licensing considerations. This is where we look at the information and the documents that you've submitted with your application. We want to see that it is true and correct. We want to see that you have placed notices in the relevant newspapers. And we will also check, as previously mentioned, the business's viability. So your NPV projections for a retail site will help us determine whether or not this business will be viable. Will the business promote all the licensing objectives as indicated previously? And will the business promote the advancement of HDSAs? Now, HDSAs refers to historically disadvantaged South Africans. And how we look at this will be, we require for an entity to have 25% participation by Black participants. And in our definition of Black, white females also qualify as historically disadvantaged. And does the business give effect to the Liquid Fuels Charter? Analysis considerations for a site. This will be completely new. You're not buying an existing business. It's just a land that you now plan on having a filling station on. So we will check if the ownership of that site corresponds with that of the applicant. That means we do not require leases. The person who's applying for the site license needs to be the person who is licensed to be the person who holds the title deed to that particular piece of land. Is the site correctly zoned for retailing activities? So here we will look at your zoning certificate and check whether or not that zoning permits you to have retailing activities on that piece of land. Does the site meet environmental requirements of the business, the environmental authorities to authorize you to have that facility there? And is there a need for that particular site? Did you get the permission? If it allows for access from a national road, you need to get permission from SANRAL or all other authorities in that regard. And did you provide a traffic count as indicated, which we will check whether or not that site has sufficient traffic passing there that necessitates another site. And generally we will look at, is there a need for this particular site? If you're coming into an area, we will look at, is there a need for a new entrant to be entering into that space? Existing sites that are there, if there are existing sites, is there a need? Can people access petroleum products in that area? If you're coming in, will you not be taking literage from existing sites? If not, then are you bringing a particular service to that community? And how much do you project that you're going to be pumping? And how do you plan on getting those literage? Say, for example, there is a site that is existing there, but you are targeting a different market. You need to basically convince us that in you coming into that space, you will not be taking literage from the existing players, and that you will be adding a service, and that you will be able to, getting into this space is quite expensive. So you need to be able to show us or prove to us that you will be able to make the return on the investment that you initially make, while also not taking or killing the existing businesses that are there. Considerations for a retail. Now, a site license will be paired with a retail. When you apply for both a retail and a site. So the site is for the land and the retail is for your operations there. So when considering our retail applications, we actually look at the ownership of the business. The owner, in terms of your company document, does it correspond with what you have on the application? And by a wholesaler, because that is not allowed. You need to play in one space. If you're a wholesaler, you cannot retail. And if you have a retail, you cannot be wholesaling. And what is the level of ownership and control of this business by HDSAs? As previously indicated, we need you to be 25% owned by HDSAs. Is there a need for the site or for this business? Does the business have a consistent and reliable supply of petroleum product This we will determine by looking at your supplier agreements and the terms thereof. And how many people will be employed in this establishment, whether it is a new site or a site that is changing hands. Also, we will require projections of liters. In this case, you need to provide to us, if it's a change of hands, let me start there. If it's a change of hands, we will look at the liters that you've pumped. You will provide an NPV and you will provide historic liters pumped from that site. And when you actually draw or come up with your projections, you need to be looking at what the site could pump previously as a baseline, and then tell us what you project that the site will pump. If it's a new to industry, you will not have any baseline, but you will then look at how much are you projecting that the site will pump. And also we will look at how will the business be funded. For this, you'll need to bring us, if you get a loan for the business, own funding that you also have as indicated.
Hi, hello, welcome back, and thank you for joining us here at the NEF Business TV. NEF means Business, National Empowerment Fund, growing economic participation. We are aware of the technical glitches. In this case, Mpho from the Department of Energy was still outlining the funding requirements and also having the Black Economic Empowerment dividend of creating much needed employment, ensuring that you qualify in terms of the BE law being a previously disadvantaged individual, 25% of the HDSAs would then constitute or form part of the consortium of any deal in the sector. So Mpho, just to move forward, because I just want us to get to the interaction as well in the interest of time. And I need to apologize for the break in transmission. We are aware of it, but we'll have this podcast ready on all of our social media platforms. It will be on our website and we'll also post it on YouTube. Mpho, if I may just jump to the Q&As, and we'll share your presentation with on our website for those that want to go into it in detail. Can you just give us a sense? There's some of the questions are around the ownership of the site. Do you have to have the title deed, or can this be leased? And while you also respond to that, is how well has the department done in ensuring that the transformation imperative is upheld, especially in areas where there's high volumes of traffic, and these are preferable sites that used to be historically allocated to white male dominantly? Hi, Mpho. I'll take the cue from our technical. Yes, we can. I'm not sure what is going on. So where you are, it tends to come and go. So I can hear you fine now, but I'm just looking at the time and I don't want to take away from the rest of your presentation. Just very quickly, the questions that I had given you, were you able to hear those? But maybe I think when we summarize towards segment 4, if you can,
Cindy, I've lost you completely now.
Yeah, if you can locate a better network where you are, because we're not even able to take Q&As at the moment. So with if you will permit us some grace that with the Q&A, or when we wrap up in the conclusion segment, that you'd be able to pick up on your presentation. We do have to move on to our next speaker. If I can ask Tebogo Matsi to please switch on your video and your audio. And Tebogo Matsi is from Engine, the transformation manager, and part of the segment. The next segment is on the oil majors that you can pose your questions to on how to engage in their supplier value chain, economic development or enterprise development, and how do you get your aspirations and desires ahead of the rest. How do you position yourself to take advantage of the low-hanging fruit, as it were? So Tebogo, if you're available, may you share your screen and also unmute your audio. Tebogo? Hello? Hi, Tebogo. Please indicate that you can hear us. While we're here, we also have questions coming from the chat room where people are saying this is a wonderful opportunity where you can share your business or your email address, the contact list, so that you can be on the database. We'll be able to then get back to you if we're not able to answer all the questions. But I see one from Ernest Russell who says, what kind of licensing do you need for cross-border wholesale to countries like Eswatini, Lesotho, and Botswana? And Tami also concurs with us, saying that let's rather have the presentation on the website as we're struggling to get the audio, or there is an interruption in the audio. So Tebogo, are you there? Welcome. So we're not able to pick up Tebogo. Let's see who's our next speaker in this segment. We'll ask Mr. Sibia if you are available to speak on the Retail Association or the Retail Fuel Association and the Industry Dealer Council. Exactly what do you do? Because there are many dynamics that come into play here. One is the regulatory framework. Secondly is the aspirations of Black economic participation and inclusion. And we know that we're dealing with a sluggish economy, notwithstanding the impact of COVID-19, and how many jobs have been severed, that we have people who are on the fringes of the economy that need to be accommodated. So I'm going to ask Mr. Sibia, who's the CEO of the Fuel Retailers Association, Reggie, if you're available and you can hear us, please won't you share your presentation, unmute your microphone and your video as well. Hi, Reggie. Hi, Reggie.
Hi, Cindy, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm hoping that your connectivity is more consistent. Yeah, unmute your mic, Reggie. Unmute your mic.
I'm not sure why it goes back.
There we go.
Yeah, it just automatically goes back. So I need to.
But technology will humble you. No, it's okay. We're getting there.
No,
So,
it's the 4IR, so that's fine.
For IR, the new normal indeed. So
Exactly.
I'm very curious, Reggie, about the Fuel Retailers Association. Exactly what do you do? What legitimizes the existence of this association? What assistance do you have? What part do you play in the entire value chain? I'll leave it to you. Thank you, Mr. Sibia.
Thank you, Cindy. Yes, it was quite a broad topic I was given, and it's quite a challenging one with 10 minutes. So I'll try and just focus on key issues, which I think might be relevant. And obviously, I'm open to questions later on. I am the CEO of the Fuel Retailers Association, shortly called FRA. We basically represent all the interests of fuel retailing in South Africa. We currently bolstering a membership of 2,500. So we are an independent and autonomous association. We get involved with all issues of governance and sustainability in the business and the operations of the fuel service stations. And we're there basically to ensure that the interest of fuel retailers, where service station owners are taken care of. So our role is actually twofold. We do get involved with issues of access to the market. So we do get involved in the issue of developing the sector code, for example.
Hi, Reggie.
Yes, Cindy.
I do beg your pardon. Sorry for the interruption, but at some point during your presentation, we just missed the audio. So I'm not sure, because on my side on the screen, I can see it reflects that the microphone is on, it's working, and so is the screen. We can see you well. It's bright and clear, but we just missed your audio. So I don't know what it is that happened on your side. Can you just double check? Let's just test that very quickly.
My audio still
Hi,
shows
Reggie.
fine. Can you hear me?
Mm.
Can you hear me?
Is there anything that you might have changed on your side?
No. I didn't change anything. I think
We're missing your audio, so I'm not sure even if we were to continue. Let's just try again. Sound check.
I can hear you very well.
No, it's definitely not working. So, but I think for me, what I'm taking away is, number one, Reggie, I'll check again. Our technicians are busy now trying to sort out the audio. But I just want to say we were really encouraged at the National Empowerment Fund by the sheer response, not only of the industry players, your oil majors, and at the speedily, or how speedily you had responded to the call to have a platform to talk about the fuel sector. Because as you say, it is quite a vast and broad industry that deals with the liquid petroleum, energy and gas sector. There is intensive regulation around it and various players. While we have people who in earnest are saying that we just want to know, a dream seems insurmountable until it's achieved. How do I start? Especially if I do not have the finances. Capital is still a serious barrier to entry for many entrepreneurs. And while information is abound, it is also whether information is applicable, or knowledge that is applicable, and people can see the pockets of excellence and successes, as we've seen with the investees within the NEF, that it will be real. So we need to be authentic and not superficial in how we deal with the economic transformation or economic inclusion of the previously disadvantaged. So I'm hoping that I didn't interrupt your train of thought, but let's try again, Reggie. I see you're back.
Can you hear me now,
I do
Cindy?
apologize. I'm sure it's hugely frustrating to all of us.
Can you hear me now?
Nope, it's not working. I can't hear you. I'm not sure of the other participants. If I can get an indication that, okay, I see on the panel.
People are saying they can hear me.
We can hear you.
So let you continue. On my side, I think the fault is possibly something that we need to clear. But the panelists on Zoom, and I'm assuming that on social media, they can hear you. Everybody says they can hear you. So let me deal with our in-house audio issues then. I do beg your pardon. Please continue.
No problem. Thank you, Cindy. Yeah, so our role, I was saying, is actually twofold. We do get involved with a regulatory framework or the legislation to ensure that we remove and we eliminate the barriers to entry as much as we can. So the people who have been in the industry for quite some time will realize the journey that we're coming from in the area of transformation, that we started with the Liquid Fuels Charter. This charter was actually annexed to the Petroleum Products Act, and one would have actually expected that then it would become law. But in practice, it actually just became clear that this was more a gentleman's agreement. And not only that, it was very vague in a number of areas. For example, it mainly focused on the ownership, and I think Mpho touched a bit on the 25% ownership, but also that was very confusing in terms of application. For example, if an oil company decides to give 25% of their marketing aspect of the business, was that then enough? And what then happened is that most of the oil majors actually got into what we call the BEE, partnerships like Shell with Tebe Investments, where they actually offered 25% of shareholding to those BEE partners. But then this left a big question about then the rest of the value chain. What happens in retailing? How do we then? How does the Liquid Fuels Charter, ensure that there is compliance? Also in that aspect, what about the other areas like storage, distribution, et cetera, et cetera? So it became very clear that while this was one of the first charters that came into the industry, that it was not actually fulfilling the expectations of the stakeholders and also of the public at large. And then the other thing that the Liquid Fuels Charter had, they were talking of things like the supportive culture, but again, I mean, how do you define the supportive culture? And then the other problem is that it introduced the elements of supporting finances and credit terms, but again, it was not clear how then the oil companies are supposed to do that. So there was a lot of gray areas, and so it did not really do what it was supposed to do. Then there was a call from the industry to relook at the Liquid Fuels Charter. FRA was actually at the forefront of those negotiations, and we are actually currently just completed what we called the draft sector code under the DTI legislation, which is a fuel-specific sector code, and it is very, very clear with very clear targets, and it also identifies the different activities in the value chain. So there's a sector code for retailing, there's a sector code for wholesaling, distribution and storage, refining, also biofuels, and also gas. So, so we had to identify all the areas of opportunity, and each of these activities has got its own scorecard with clear measures. And also what we advanced in the sector code was the issue of definitions, obviously, and that is assisted by the current legislation. As you might be aware, the HDSA definition was quite problematic in the Liquid Fuels Charter, because that also included, white women, and also then if somebody used that as a definition, for example, if you have more other races like, Indian, for example, as a race progressing, that would be counted as a movement. And then when the audit was done in 2011 by the Department of Energy, it became very clear that the African group specifically was way, way behind. And so the issue of definition also had to be reviewed. That's why now when we talk about Black, we're clear who we're talking about, which is African, Indian and colored, but also our scorecards also address the issue of demographics through the EAP targets to ensure that, we balance all the groups according to the demographics. And also there is a weighing of points for a designated group like women. So if you actually get the participation of women in your business, you get more points, and also the youth and also the people with disabilities. So it is more refined. But what is more important, I think, to answer your question, Cindy, how do we change this from just being a gentleman's agreement and make sure that it actually works? The amendments of the BBBE Act came in with Section 10 of that amendment, on which the codes are also based on. And Section 10 basically states that any organ of state that issues licensing for business purposes, it can no longer issue a license that is not compliant. So for us, this is a milestone, because when we get the sector code gazetted, the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy will no longer have any excuse or reason of why they will actually issue a license that is not compliant, because Section 10 requires that, and DMRE will have to actually record, even in their annual report, how many licensing that they've issued, how many were compliant, and if they were not compliant, what were the reasons. So we believe that is a major milestone, and that will change things significantly on the regulatory space. So that's really good news with the timing that I'm giving. I don't want to take more. I'm not even been timing myself, but also on the other regulatory matters, because it's one thing just to get Black people coming into the industry. We also need to make sure that when they come in in an industry that is sustainable. So one of the key roles that the FRA deals with is the issue of margins. So many retailers are not even aware who actually negotiate the margins for retailing. It is not the oil company, I have to say that. It is the associations like the FRA. We sit with the Department of Energy every year and we review the margins. And we also give the input in terms of the moving cost and the expenses to ensure that the margins are equitable. Also, we had a new pricing system that was actually introduced in 2013, which also recognizes the investments so that then you can get a return on your investment. And without going into too much detail, the FRA has been very vocal about that regulatory system, and we are busy fighting now in court with the Department of Energy. Not because there is any animosity, but it is just to ensure that if the regulator is not ensuring the sustainability of retailers, that they are actually held accountable. So if courts have got to make that determination, those are the things that the FRA is doing. So there's a lot of other things, Cindy, really, that we're doing on the regulatory framework, also including the issues of monitoring the number of new sites. And this, for people who wants to come to the industry, may wonder why is FRA, advocating for objecting of new sites. I always say to people, just imagine you've just invested 10 million in your business today, and then you hear that tomorrow there's a new service station that is coming next to your service station, and that's going to take all your volumes away. How will that be? So it is very important that we also monitor the issue of sustainability of businesses by ensuring that we do not have over-proliferation of service stations. So there is a lot that we're doing, but in terms of NEF, I think that the sector code, which will be going out for public commentary by basically end of this year, before it goes to gazetting, that will change the landscape in a very, very meaningful way. And not even all companies will have any choice. Another thing on the ownership that the sector code has addressed, it has addressed the issue that in the service stations, there are two ownership models. So there's a site license holder, and the site license holder is the one who actually owns the land and the assets. And then there is then the retail license holder that is for actually running and owning the business. And again, we have to make sure that there are two scorecards in the sector code, so that there is transformation not only in owning the business, which is just basically a franchise agreement that you get maybe for 5 years or 3 years, but that also black people get into the ownership of the infrastructure. So even now, going forward, to have your site license recognized after the code has been gazetted, it must have at least 30% ownership level. I'm not sure I'm doing it time, Cindy, so I didn't time myself, so I'll be guided by you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sibia, for that insightful presentation. We're doing well for time, but we also want to engage more with the question and answers. And the question around the set-asides or even the charters that we had to incorporate previously disadvantaged individuals into the economy as part of the concessions which were negotiated in the advent of democracy. There isn't much room to maneuver outside that space, and where others might argue there should be a higher concession, if you will. We've seen in other countries where there is indigenous ownership or the equivalent of our BEE. Those kind of quotas are not likely to change, but we need to learn to work within the parameters of what we are given. What would you say has been the success rate of transformation in the sector? Are we reaching the desired targets?
No, we haven't, as I indicated, and only is not because there was no effort. The liquid fuels charter was trying to address that, but due to the number of weaknesses that I've just identified, it is not able to take us forward. And as I mentioned as well, we did have an audit which showed that there was a dismal performance, especially in the area of Africans owning the space. But moving forward, I said that the Section 10 of the BBBE legislation, which actually enforce the Department of Energy, as we call it, to now issue licensing, because there's always exchanges of hand, Cindy. Even today, there's probably a license that's being issued. So once the sector code, which we are busy doing with the draft form, is gazetted, then the department will no longer be able to issue any license that is not compliant. For me, that is what is going to make the significant change. And also, then the department is also going to be accountable to Parliament in terms of reporting annually, the number of licenses that they've issued and why they are not compliant. So it's been a painful journey, but I think there's a progress. I must also, recognize the fact that some oil companies, in spite of the weaknesses in the liquid fuels charter, some oil companies have been advancing the progress, but it's got its own shortcomings. For example, when it comes to the issue of site license ownership, now you get an owner of the land who's just might be a white male currently under the liquid fuels charter, who just says, I don't want to transform, do whatever you want to do. I'm not prepared to transform. But when we move forward, that license, after gazetting of the sector code, that license is no longer going to be a decision of the oil company, whether they actually allow that person who's leasing the property to them not to transform. That person has got to transform through the issuing of a license that meets the requirements.
All right, Resibia, just a very quick question. There's a number of our participants that want to know that is the license transferable from one dealer to the other in terms of their lease agreement, and specifically what is the duration in that case if it's moved from one owner to the other. The second one is around the wholesalers association and what kind of support the fuel or retail fuel association is offering the wholesalers.
Yeah, okay, the department probably will have been the right person to answer that, but the site license is transferable. And there have been different views, but it is transferable, and there's been some court orders around that matter. So it is transferable, but the retail license is not transferable. And also we must just understand that the licenses are actually the property of the department. I've had people, for example, when their lease agreement comes to an end and there is no renewal of the relationship, and people say, well, but can I hold on to my license? No, you cannot hold on to your license. Your license is actually linked to the business. Now I'm talking about the retail license, which is for operating the business, which is linked with the franchise agreement. But if you own your own property, then you've got two licenses. You've got a site license, which gives you the rights to operate in that piece of land. And then you've also got the retail license, which then gives you the right to operate the business. So both platforms are treated differently. And it actually becomes very complex to discuss the pros and cons of each license. But if you own your own land, you have more leverage, because even if the oil company, terminates the business, you still own the property, so they cannot actually terminate your site license per se. I hope that clarifies the question. Was there any other part of the question which I missed out, Cindy? Now I can't hear you.
Let me unmute. The question was on about exploring cross-border opportunities and what the requirements would be in transporting fuel and liquid petroleum.
Okay, that is not my area. I'm in the retailing, but the issue of transporting fuel it is a possibility. There are people who are able to actually even get the product from the likes of Mozambique into South Africa. All that you need to have is to apply for a wholesale license. So you can actually then import the product, and then you can also distribute the product to the neighboring countries. But obviously then you need to actually follow the regulations in that particular country. And also, if you are bringing in the product into South Africa, you've got to make sure that it meets all the specifications that are required. But the first requirement is that you must have a wholesale license.
All right, Reggie, we're going to leave it there. There was another one around what the proposed bill would term as the definition of previously disadvantaged persons, and what exactly that constitutes. What is it going to look like in the definition, or broader definition of previously disadvantaged persons?
We've dealt away with that definition. It's no longer there. So we've moved away from HDSA. As I explained earlier on, that HDSA was a broader definition, which also included white females. And when the legislation was reviewed, then we introduced the new definition. There's only one definition now, which is black. And black means African, Indian, and colored. And that is the definition.
We do appreciate your time. We hope you'll stay for the duration or the rest of the webinar. Thanks so much, Reggie. And I'm sorry about the stop-start and no the hiccups there as well. I just want to check from Total, the other oil majors. We're also expecting Zugiswa Njobe from Total. If you can please log on as well. In the meantime, I'll ask Ntobeko Mukhadime, who is from the Shell, she's a Shell Retailer Development Manager. And Ntobeko, if you can please switch on, we love to see your faces. It really feels lonely and quite monotonous, just seeing one face. So if we can see your faces as well, colleagues, please. And Ntobeko, if you can unmute your audio and your screen as well, from Shell as one of the oil majors. And the questions, we try and field those as best as we can. I believe that on Facebook and the chat rooms, everything is running seamlessly. Anything else that we're not able to do now, we'll definitely come back to you. But for what it's worth, the capacity crowd that we experience, we're really encouraged by your interaction with the National Empowerment Fund, our key stakeholders, and also accessing our services and products. The stories that should inspire you is that if somebody else can do it, that looks like you, of the same creed, culture, and gender, as you, primarily with African women who have delved into industries that were historically dominated by white males in petroleum, manufacturing, construction. We have a treasure trove of examples of people that have taken advantage of the Development Finance Institute. So we'll go now to our next speaker. I don't see is Ntobeko online. Ntobeko, if you can join us. Otherwise, we'll just have to, there we go. Ntobeko, please unmute your audio and we see your presentation, or if we can see a visual from your side. Thank you and welcome.
Can you see me now?
We can see your presentation. There you are. Okay,
yes.
Good to see you. Welcome. Please go ahead. You have
Thank you very much.
10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Cindy. And thank you very much for inviting us as Shell to be part of this event and just to share about our own processes on how we recruit retailers and the opportunities that are available for people that are interested in entering this industry as well. So I'm just going to share about our processes, why this is important for us to make sure that we are transforming our retail network and also compliance with the BBBE Act as well, especially with regards to the Petroleum Liquid Fuels Charter that Mr. Spear was just talking about that is being drafted. So just going to put my presentation on that, hope you can see it. So just high level, as Shell, we an oil and energy company that is in different parts, have got different parts of the organization, but today we're going to talk about the retailing organization. We also have the manufacturing organization, which is where our refinery that we share 50-50 with BP sits in, as well as the trading organization, which makes sure that we import the crude oil. And we have a joint venture that we share with Tebe Investments as well. And then the global organization, which is the marketing facing organization that actually does the sale of the lubricants and the bitumen and aviation and the fuels to business and business to customers. So our retail developments and recruitment forms part of our strategy, which as a pillar, we've got a nation building strategy where we aim to deliver shared value between us and the communities we operate, and also for our current and future customers, and ensure that we have a societal license to operate and create jobs and provide procurement opportunities for the communities we will operate, and attain our license to operate by making sure that we are compliant to the regulations of the land. From a retail franchising opportunity, for us, we aim to make sure that we are transforming our retail network so that it represents the demographics of the country, looking at the economic active citizens of our country. So we've been on a journey to make sure that we are looking at how our network looks and actively seek to make sure that we are recruiting Black retailers into our network. And this is in response to the Liquid Fuels Charter and the BBBE Act as well. And we have, over a number of years now, created a platform, an online platform where anybody that is interested in getting a Shell franchise can go on our website and see what are the requirements and actually apply on the website. And I'm going to take you through that process. So who can apply? So this is the profile of the person that we can apply. So firstly, we want to make sure that the person that applies and is part of our network in South Africa is a South African citizen. So that is the first requirement. We have a preference for Black people as defined by the BBBE Act. And we look at Black males and Black females, but we do have a shortage of Black female being owners of retail sites. So we have a preference for Black female candidates to ensure that they are fully represented in our network. the candidate that applies must not be involved in bribery and corruption. So we have a due diligence process where we also then test the candidates against our anti-bribery and corruption policy, as well as for the business perspective, also look at the integrity due diligence of the business. So we make sure that we are dealing with the company that is has passed our due diligence checks. And we also verify the candidates' credentials and all their qualifications as well, to make sure that they are representing themselves accurately. The other part that is important to us is that the candidate must show that they are willing to put their own contribution into the business. We do not specify how much this is, but there must be an element of their own contribution. So this also shows their commitments. As per Aldine's introductory presentation, we have partnered with NEF as a funder. We aim to assist our retailers that we appoint to actually purchase the sites, and NEF and any funder will have their own requirements on how much the personal contribution is. We don't stipulate that, but the funder, NEF, will say to the candidates based on the transaction how much their contribution needs to be. In terms of the application process, as I mentioned, the application process is an online process. So if you go to our website, which is www.shell.co.za, on the top right-hand side, you'll see retail franchising. And if you click on there, that is the application place where you put in your application. It's a very simple application process. What we do is when there's a site that is changing hands, as Mr. Sibiya said, there's always change of hands in terms of sites. So where the agreement with the existing retailer has come to an end, or if the retailer wants to sell their sites, we advertise the sites available for sale on our websites, and the advert stays online for 2 weeks. So at any time you can go onto our website and check which sites are available for sale. In the event that there are no sites available for sale, you can at any time also load your profile, and you would specify in which geography you are interested in. And when there are sites that become available, you'll then be notified to apply for those sites. So you loading your profile ensures that you become aware as and when sites become available. And the profile that you load obviously would need to stipulate that you meet the requirements, and we will then screen all the applications, all the profiles against our requirements that are shared in the previous slide. And if you do meet our minimum requirements, you will then be shortlisted and invited to an interview. So the first interview aims to assess not only if you meet the minimum requirements, but also do you have financial acumen? Do you understand the health, safety, and security and environments requirements that are required for sites? Do you understand customer service? Do you understand the operations of a site? And have you shown interest in the business as well? And do you have any experience being an entrepreneur? And obviously having met all the other minimum requirements. So that's the initial interview. Should you pass this interview phase, you will then be introduced to the current retailer and given information to help you put together a business plan on how you would actually run the site and improve the performance of the sites. And you will present the business plan to a panel. The panel will then decide based on those presentations who they then approve and appoint as the new retailer for the sites. And we will then assist you in making sure that there's a smooth handover between yourself as the newly appointed retailer and the existing retailer. And I'm going to talk more about that assistance that we provide newly appointed retailers as well. So we have a business support unit. The business support unit is really to make sure that there's a smooth transition between the current and the new retailer, yourself as the newly appointed retailer. And then the second part is to actually help you by making sure that you understand how to run the operation in a financially sustainable manner. So we provide you through this process the financial tools that will help you to understand your business financial performance and to manage your business performance and understand how to analyze business performance and what are the controls that you can put in place to actually perform better and improve your business through that. Should there be any operational issues that you are facing, you are supported by this unit, and you are supported by our sales team who regularly visits you and support you in improving your sales and improving your performance of the site. So we have regular interactions in the first year as regular as monthly. And as you are more familiar in the years after the second year, the face-to-face interactions become quarterly. And we do these interactions, the business support units, as well as the funder and your sales territory manager that supports you as well. The agreements, the franchise agreements for all our Black retailers is a 5-year agreement. So that will enable you to pay any loan that you have that you've acquired in actually purchasing the business. And after the 5 years is where you potentially don't have a loan and you can then see all the profits from the business is retained in the business as opposed to having this finance that you are paying off over that period. In terms of obviously what happens after 5 years, based on your business performance, and there's a compliance and a dashboard that is kept that can be then renewed for a 3-year term and a 3-year term consecutively. So we help you in the pre-handover phase, making sure that all the existing accounts and all the systems are then changed over to your name. And post-handover is throughout the 5 years. There are business support programs that we put in place to support you and make sure that you are a financially sustainable business over and above whatever support you will get from your funder. Yeah, that is it. I went through very quickly, but I'm hoping there's time for any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Very insightful and useful. As we can see with the reaction from our participants, we have a quick one from Tembeka Bobo, and amongst others, there's also Mandilake, I beg your pardon, who asks about the requirements, personal contribution. Some saying that it could be a barrier to entry, as typically Black people and Black women. Tembeka says, we don't have the money. It's as simple as that. What do you mean, or what do you refer to as personal contribution? And would you be willing to take a financing from a DFI like ourselves, the NEF, as part of that owner contribution?
Yeah, okay, so personal contribution is actually your own funds. We have a lot of candidates that have been employed by other businesses, and then at some points in their career, they want to then become a retailer. So what we often see is that that person will then utilize their pension fund, as an example, or whatever other saving that they've acquired during the time that they're employed as their own personal contribution. So it is money from your own pockets, and it's just shows your commitments. And in terms of what that's, if the funding from NEF, for example, will be classified as own contribution, no, it's not. So over and above what you have put aside and saved, whether through an investment or through your pension or some sort of saving like that, you will then, the balance of that, you would then approach a financer like NEF to then subsidize that in order for you to purchase the sites.
And Ntombeko, please, may you just close your presentation so we can see the splendor of your beauty, that you can mesmerize us in a full screen mode. Because I just want to deal with this question, especially when with owner contribution. Is it negotiable? And the previous speaker was saying that if you can get the franchisor to give you pre-approval for a site, for example, and you come to the NEF and you apply for the whole package of what the funding is required, that would also include owner contribution, but you have to be pre-approved by the franchisor. Are you saying that Shell doesn't accommodate that? It has to be your own funds?
Okay, so in the events that you get 100% funding for the sale, I think if I understand you correctly, Cindy, so that would be taken into account as well. So if you can show that you have been given pre-approval by a funder, that will be taken into account.
Okay, and a very quick one as well is, how do we get an account with Shell, as it seems to be a hideous process with no response? Ntabiseng Mutsie is posing that one.
Ntabiseng, can you just clarify when you say an account with Shell, are you referring to an account as a supplier?
Well, maybe very briefly, just to round off, what type of accounts would you have? What kind of service level agreements would you afford your partners?
Okay, all right. So as someone that wants to run a service station, you'll be given a franchise agreement. Yeah. And that franchise agreement as a Black retailer would be for 5 years. So that would be for us as an oil major to provide you with fuel, and for yourself to then operate the service station. Yeah. Okay, so that is the franchise agreements. Let me just expand on other accounts that you could potentially have with Shell. So if you are a company that actually supplies services or products that Shell can procure from, then you would have a vendor account with us. And for you to be a vendor, you would have to actually subscribe to a database and that we utilize. I'll type in the details of the database. I don't have it offhand. And we then, when we are looking for suppliers, we actually go to the database and we look for suppliers that meet the specification that we are looking for. And we actually ask them to submit proposals. And based on that, we can then, if you're successful in that process, become a supplier of Shell. So there's that process. So I think in terms of, if people are interested in that, I can type in the name of the database that we utilize for getting our suppliers for products or services, and you need to be listed on that database to be considered.
All right, so now as Shell Retail Development Manager in Ntombeko, there is questions that are coming from the breadth and width of the country, as NEF has got a footprint in all 9 provinces, that says, can you give us a ballpark figure in your support of having more Black people owning a Shell service station? And what are the figures, what are the targets that you still aspire to have?
Okay, so we aspire to have a majority of the company-owned sites being Black-owned sites. So we are currently about 40% of our sites being Black-owned, and we still have a target to increase that by, as I said, focusing predominantly on Black women and also focusing predominantly on Black youth. I think we don't have a lot of youth trying to enter the sector, and we would encourage as many youth as possible to apply to be a retailer franchise. And we have a national footprint in terms of our own service stations that we own, and we advertise for each region. So anybody that is interested in being a retailer can apply for the region where they're located, or if they're willing to relocate, they can apply for a region outside of where they're located as well.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much, but do stay with us. We do have still just over an hour to go in case there are any other questions, but we really appreciate your time as one of the oil majors represented by Ntobeko Mukhadime. She is the Shell Retailer Development Manager, and we're still in the segment of the oil majors, and we are joined now from Total by Ms. Zukiswa Njobe, who will talk us through their Black economic empowerment milestones and the funding criteria, and how you go about to also being part of the value chain of Total. It's over to you, Ms. Njobe, and thank you so much for joining us. You have 10 minutes. Please ensure that you share your presentation in full screen view, and also unmute your mic and your video as well. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Cindy. I don't know if you guys can see my screen now.
We can see it. Thank you very much. Just please put it in full screen view, and we can see you as well. Just tilt your camera a little bit. Just tilt your camera. Tilt your camera a little bit. There we go. Perfect. Yes. Okay. Please go ahead. You have 10 minutes.
All right. Thank you so much, Cindy, for the opportunity, and thank you for inviting us as Total. I think in the interest of time, I will go through the presentation straight away. I don't know why now it's not moving. My cursors are not moving. Don't know why. Okay, gosh. Okay.
Are you winning, Zukiswa? Otherwise, you can also use your arrows. I mean, I've got a technical team here and our HFD who's helping me navigate as you are as well. So it's okay, it's fine. We are all trying to just get the information out there using a technology, that obviously has different aspects to it. So please go ahead.
Okay, there you go. So from what Dr. Reggie has explained earlier, so it looks like we are all aligned in terms of what the job at hand is. And Total is one of the company as well that was a signatory in the Liquid Fuel Charter. So our strategy is really aligned in terms of that. So what we aspire to do at Total is the ownership of the service stations by the BE candidates. So how do we go about doing this is we get our stock of dealers from the sites that are either willing buyer, willing seller, or the dealer is not renewed their contract, and or the dealer is terminated. So if there are any issues in terms of the agreement, you are in breach of your own dealer agreement, you get terminated, and that's where we get our stock from. So Eldin earlier alluded to the fact that we've got about 547 sites, of which 150 or plus minus 150 of those are dealer owned, dealer operated. But our main focus is on the company owned dealer operated sites. But we do assist dealers that are dealer owned, dealer operated. If they wish to sell, we also assist them in the process of selling the site. So our preference is given to BE candidates as explained earlier, which is first preference your Black females. Because how we went about this is we looked at our network to see who owns the majority of our service stations and what are our targets in terms of meeting the Liquid Fuels Charter targets as per the sector code. So that's where then the preference is given. So as we've seen that there is really a gap in terms of Black females owning service stations as well as colored. And in some areas, some races, even though they are BEE, they are overrepresented like Indians in most areas. Therefore, preference then is given to those that are underrepresented. So Total does not get involved in the negotiation of the price. I think we need to maybe clarify that and be transparent. So how it works is the dealer would sell the site and obviously use whichever way they use to calculate their site. But where we get involved is we request them to give us a proof of how they got to the price they wish to charge for their service station, because we don't want to come across as price fixing, but we do play an oversight role in terms of the brand and how the sites are being charged, so that the person, when they take over the site, they are able to have sustainable businesses. Because if you overpay your site for your site, then you won't be able to sustain your business. And 2 months down the line, the site is closed because of financial issues. So we try and get involved in that aspect. So when I say we don't negotiate, we don't physically get involved, but we play an oversight role to make sure that the site is fairly priced. So we work with funders as well, the likes of NEF, even though we don't have a formal agreement with NEF, but we do send the appointed applicants to them and other funders to consider for funding. We also work with the Department of Minerals and Energy with regards to licensing, because as well there, in terms of the timing, in terms of how we can do to assist people in applying for the retail licenses, because we understand that people that are not from the industry, they don't know what the requirements are. Therefore, we come and we assist them in order to sort out the licensing issues. So we also support the dealers once they are placed on site. We have an incubation program, which I will share in my letter, in my slides, in terms of how do we do the support, because one of the conditions of funding by the funders is that we support the applicants. So we don't leave you once you apply for the site, you're appointed, we support you until you're able to run solo. So people that we get, for now we are working on the database. We are working on getting the applications on the intranet. Because of COVID, we could not get that live, but it's gonna be on the on the internet very soon. At the moment, people, they do call in at the number that is shared there, and then we keep them on the database and we send them information as soon as the sites become available. And that is the guy that is assisting us in terms of getting the database together and sending out invitations. His name is Andam Pofu, and that is his email address. Okay, so if there are any questions, you'll stop me. But in terms of how the criteria is, so we look at the brand ambassador. So it has to be somebody who subscribes to our values. So this is what we go through when we are screening people's applications to shortlist them for an interview. So we'll go through the interview and we look if the person has got strong personal values, because you don't want people, for instance, who are not honest. That's not what we stand for. It's one of our values, and you'll pick up those things on the application process, on the application forms as well. So we'll also look at the BE profile of the person. Like we said, it has to be a South African citizen as described or defined in the BE Act. And we focus on the previously disadvantaged groups, which is your blacks and coloreds, Indians, and unfortunately back then Asians were part of the BEE. And also you need to meet the total ABC and due diligence process. Somebody who doesn't have a criminal record, obviously we look for each case for its merits. If, for instance, you were a criminal, or rather you went to jail for politics or whatever the case may be, we look at those cases differently. But if you went to, for instance, jail because of drunken driving, we know that is against our policy. Therefore, we look at those things. We also look at the entrepreneurship of the person. How is the person? Can the person run a business? You don't have to be a guru in running a business. Even if you don't have a business background, where you work, do you have managerial experience, for instance? Have you ever led a team? Because at a service station, we know that plus minus, you're looking at about 15 people that will be reporting to you. There are customers, plus minus 1,000 customers that you see a day. How do you manage crisis? So those are the things that are being asked in your application, and those are the things that we use when we do a screening process. So at the moment, like I say, we don't look at people that are working for Total internally. We are opening up the opportunity to people that are outside the company. So in terms of the appointment process, so we advertise the site, like I say, we will send people that are on the database, the information about the site, the volumes, where the site is, the key money of the site, and then the person will fill in the forms, submit the forms to us. We go through the forms, we screen, and then after screening, we invite the person for an interview. So in the interview, because you are applying for a specific site, you are requested to prepare a business plan for that specific site. Then you come and present the business plan to the panel. And after that, if you are shortlisted, then you go through a psychometric test and credit check. If you pass all of those, then you get an appointment letter. You attend a training, which is about 4 weeks training in class and on site. Being an attendant, being a supervisor, being a cashier, being a manager, because the minute you go through that, you start appreciating the business. And then we place the dealer on site. We obviously assist, like I said, with the funding as well as with the retail license applications. Again, here with the process and with the screening, it's also important for somebody to put in their own unencumbered cash. Again, as well as a Total, we don't subscribe how much that money should be, but it has to be, you need to bring a skin in the game, because the minute you don't invest anything, because running a service station is not easy. The day you are faced with challenges, you pack your bags and you leave. And I mean, we've had experiences of sites where dealers did that because they did not contribute anything. Again, most people that are important in determining how much you must bring in would be your funders, because they do a due diligence over and above what we do in terms of your affordability. So we work together with them, but we don't subscribe how much an applicant should have, because we don't want to have barrier in entries where we say we prescribe have 50% and people don't have 50% and therefore they don't qualify. Okay, so what we do, like I said, we support the dealer once they are placed on site from day one. Remember when I mentioned earlier that we support you in applying for the site, we support you in getting funding, we support you in getting the retail licenses. And when you're on site now, we support you from day one in terms of your daily and monthly turnover reporting. So there are reports that you are required to submit. So basically the controls of running a service station, because we know that without controls, you will run the service station down. So we assist you with the controls. We go and we check you every day, check you every month, until you are able to run solo in your year 4. So I'm saying year 4 here, but the agreement is year 5. But we feel that by year 4, you are able to run the business on your own without a lot of support from the team. So the people, we've got 2 teams, which is the training and entrepreneurship team, which is my team, that will be responsible in helping you with the profitability, with the financials, business review, coaching and mentoring, over and above what the funders also have, because they also have their post-investment team that assists with the support. We also have the ops team, which is your territory managers as well as the RSMs. We call them RSMs. They help you with your operational standards. What are the standards? What is required from you? Your HSEQ, your wet stock management, your P&L and commercial reviews. Those are done with you every day. It sounds very mind-blowing at the first 6 months, but once you get used to it, it becomes easier. Then we reduce in year 2, year 3, and year 4, then we do the support annually and then we offboard you. So with the conversations that we had with the funders, we agreed that we will have, especially in year 1, we will have joint reviews of the profitability of the site, or joint support. We'll go together at a service station, because there are things that they're looking at, and there are also things that as the business we're looking at in terms of supporting the person, so that if there are any red flags or there's any support or interventions that are required, we're able to attack them early instead of waiting for a year or two, then we realize we have a problem. So those are the support structures that we have in place in order to support our people in making sure they run successful businesses and profitable businesses. With any business, there are challenges. So what challenges do we face? At the moment, we're facing funding of 200,000 litres and below. It becomes a challenge with the funders because the business then does it become sustainable. And I think Aldin did share this earlier to say for a site to be profitable, it has to be 300 and up. So we've got less sites that are 300 pumpers and above. Most sites are 200, 150, 180. So that's the challenge that we have at the moment. And also the Department of Energy won't fund a site that is 200 and that is have negative NPV. So those are the challenges that we are trying now to find solutions and strategies in terms of how do we address the fact that licenses they get issued every day. It means the site that you may buy today pumping 500, 2 months or 2 years down the line, that site is pumping 250. It's no longer sustainable for you. So those are the challenges. And I think I liked what Reggie shared earlier to say those are the things as well as FRA are looking at. We also have challenges in terms of licensing. As I explained earlier, that our stock of sites, we get them from willing buyers, willing sellers, we get them from terminations, and we've got a lot of terminations, but a dealer will hold on to the license and say, this is my license, therefore I don't want to surrender. Or the oil company, I was fairly treated, therefore my agreement was terminated unfairly, and they go and they file litigations, and those can take time. Even though we have the targets that we have, we've got the sites, but the challenge then will be the litigations. And if there's a litigation, you can't apply for a site or a retail license until the litigation is resolved. So those are the issues that we have. We also have issues around the key money. Dealers, I think, over the years, they felt that they're entitled to the service stations, and also there is no clear regulation around how do they price their service stations in terms of goodwill. Therefore, they will overprice or want premiums for their service station, and most of the time it does not justify the money that they charge. And to negotiate that, it really is a challenge, and that can take time in getting it resolved. And sometimes, even though the person is appointed, they will then withdraw and say they're not interested at the site anymore because they can't afford to buy the site. And lastly, the other challenge we have now is with COVID-19, and the funders reluctant to fund sites because the volume dropped a lot. And now, in terms of how much the sites are worth is no longer what they were before COVID-19. And the dealers will say, but it is not my doing that there was COVID-19. I still want my premium for the sites. So then we have those issues that we still need to work around and deal with the funders. I think in a very nutshell, that is me. Sandy, I don't know if I've covered everything and if there are any questions for me.
Yes, thank you so much, Zugisa. We really appreciate the powerful and insightful, thorough presentation. We do have questions, and in the main, it centers around the commitment to Black economic transformation and taking into cognizance that there isn't old money or a safety net that people generally have as a deposit. In fact, one from Asanda specifically puts it in this way, and I want to do it justice, where she says, is it only the fuel sector or industry that is being supported because there are other industries that people would want to assume opportunities or take opportunities? Now we know in the main that the DFIs, especially NEF, we fund all different sectors, startup businesses, expansions, as you heard from Aldine. But the point I want to make is that at least in Asanda's words, she says, this is all new information to us. We therefore feel that we are already disadvantaged by virtue of the fact, one, we don't have the money. Secondly, we don't even know how to access the opportunities that are there. And then the other question is, I think you used an acronym, MDVs. I'm not sure if I heard you correctly, if you could just, for clarity, explain what that acronym is, which was part of the challenges that you were alluding to. Thank you.
Okay, I'll start with the first question. So I get what she says in terms of its new information, but what we use platforms like these, which we appreciate, where we go and we present the opportunities that the oil companies have, and especially Total. And second is that if people are interested in our intranet, there is information about franchising if people are interested to find out about franchising. And the third one is that when I explained earlier, the reason why we don't ask for people to pay 50% contribution of 8 million is exactly that. It's because we want people to have access to these opportunities. And that is why we did away with the fact that people must pay on, it can be whatever amount. That's why we don't subscribe in terms of how much that own contribution should be. So because we want people to be able to apply and be able to get the opportunities. And that's not the only thing we look at. That is one of many other things. We just want people who are hungry for this business, who are going to make it work, and that we can teach. That is mainly the main criteria in terms of getting people into the network. The money is something that we can talk about earlier, but we want people to have something of their own, because like I said earlier, if you don't have anything of their own, and experience taught us that people would just leave if they are experiencing challenges at site. I don't know if I've answered the first question, Cindy.
I'm very satisfied, Zuki, so thank you so much. And I think in the interest of time, what we're also going to do is just answer directly on some of the Q&As that require funding criteria or forms. We understand that we are at different levels of enlightenment or awareness as entrepreneurs or people in general. So the ones that we are able to answer, those will be covered. And I think you've done an adequate job in answering the issue about title deeds, your sites. There was an issue about the transfer of a license, as you were mentioning, that negotiations you don't necessarily get involved in, but you are there to also navigate and manage the process. So thank you so much for your time, Zukwisa Njobe. Please stay on the panel. At the end, we'll have just final thoughts and also ventilate any other questions that may arise that we haven't touched on. So I do appreciate. What was that acronym, by the way? I'm still stuck there. Did you say
Which
MDV
one?
or DMV?
No, I said-
Yes, in kumnyame bantu start kuthe fu to me but kwathi MDV ngathi ayichangsas bengizitshe ukuthi ngifundile.
Oh, no, I did not say any MDV. I said COVID-19.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I beg your pardon. Okay, no, thank you so much. I think it's the petrol fumes maybe that are permeating
Yes,
in the environment.
Yeah, maybe one last request, Cindy, would be to share our details if people are interested in the service stations in your, I don't know, in your platform, our contact numbers as well as our email addresses so they can contact us directly.
Yes, siyabonga kakhulu Zuki, so much appreciated indeed. And this is a recorded session, so that will be available on our website, as we mentioned. And we'd like to call now the next segment is for the dealer councils. And we'll ask Tony, who will join us shortly, to explain what it is that they do in assisting entrepreneurs in the space. And Tony Mukoka is the chairperson of the BP Dealer Council. And we appreciate, Tony, that you, after your presentation, you're going to have to leave. So that is fine. If you'll just put your slides in full view mode. Make sure that you are audible and close enough to your microphone, and that you also unmute the camera. Welcome, Tony, and thanks so much for joining us. Hi, Tony.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear me. We can hear you and me. Welcome to the NEF Business TV. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I only have points, so it's one slide which basically jogs my memory in terms of the points I'm going to speak in, because I'm not presenting any sets of finances. It's just like a conversation of who we are, what sort of services do we offer to our membership within the BP company. If I may continue, the dealer council, which is a structure which is available in all the oil majors, and in BP membership, it's not automatic. So a dealer voluntarily join. However, the dealer council is recognized by the BP company. As it was made clear in the presentation about the amount of sites that different oil majors have, we have in excess of 500 sites across the country. The structure of the dealer council it's made up of the National Executive Committee, and then the main other subcommittees which drives the dealer council are 5 working groups, which are primarily operational. They deal with issues such as transformations, which I'll come back to later, convenience, retailing, assets, IT, and sales and ops. And if you notice in the names of these working groups, they form all the pillars of what a retail business is all about. So as a dealer council, we are actively involved in the shaping of the business as it unfolds, whether be it in the IT form or how we improve customer service, and how are we maximizing or making sure that the interest of the franchisees, called them dealers, are being protected. And this will be made clearer as I proceed in my conversation. So these working groups are national in composition. In other words, they consist of the members of the franchise from different regions. And our regions are made up as follows. We have Gauteng North, which includes Limpopo and Mpumalanga, purely because the BP footprint in the other provinces is not as big as it is in Gauteng. And we have Gauteng South, which also includes Free State, for the same reason that our footprint in the Free State, it is not as big. And then Western Cape includes Eastern Cape as well. And then KZN is all by itself. So the working groups which I spoke about would have representation from the entire landscape of South Africa, wherever BP operates. The membership of the dealer council, the majority of them are members of FRA. This helps them to actually gain more information about what's happening in the retail sector, be it local in South Africa or international, and the other benefits which Mr. Sibia made very clear when he was presenting, relating to when we fighting issues which are sector-based and they cut across the brands. And so by their membership to the FRA, they are able to assist the sector to be able to deal with issues which are generally sector-specific. In terms of BP Dealer Council, the council survives in terms of funding, it survives by annual membership subscriptions, which are also used, the funds thereof are used in the main for the day-to-day operation of the council, but as well as when we are facing, sometimes we are able to assist in terms of resources when we are facing challenges be it in issues relating to our margins. You know, our industry is quite complex. I mean, or if I may cite an example, when you transact at the any filling station, more often than not, you use your credit card or your debit card, and generally customers are not aware that you know, there's a lot of costs that the operator, you know, have to take care of. So there is a lot of margin squeeze, and I think the main theme about this, excuse me, about our business is to forever strive to protect our margin, because after all, we come into this business primarily to maximize our margin. So we know that we want to grow our customers, but we want to make sure that we don't erode our margin. I mean, it was cited, my colleague, previous presenter cited that when the sites start pumping below 300, they have problems. And, you know, so if the margin is even tighter, even at 300,000 liters per month, if the margins are tight, then, you know, you'll find a situation where businesses are falling by the sideway. So the dealer council is, besides assisting the oil company to make sure that they are forward-looking and they maximize in areas such as shop promotions and fuel losses, but they're also looking at specific interests of members to make sure that they stay afloat throughout their lease period. So I'm going to pause there and invite questions where they are. But before I pause, I just want to cite one of the reasons why I think it was important. I'm happy that I was part of this webinar. One of the major or the biggest barrier to entry in this industry is finance. And I think the NEF webinar couldn't have been more important to, especially in the period we find ourselves where COVID-19 has been, you know, a headache for all entrepreneurs and all business sectors. So we have experienced a situation where, because of sales drops of up to between 40 and 60%, retailers who were hitherto were profitable pre-COVID-19, they're experiencing financial problems. And because our working capital is made up 90% of tax collection, you need to have too much cash in your business. Although, you know, an ordinary other person who's a chicken or a QSR, which is similar to, you know, to our own sector as an entrepreneur, but they don't have to, they're not tax collectors. So we're getting about just over around 2 rand per liter, but we collect, you know, how much, you know, and there are hidden costs, cash costs, which we have to take care of. Like I've said, the method of payment, be it a credit card, there's a lot of banking fees. So throughout this, there is a, you know, hidden costs. So when you have got any economic upheaval, those costs are fixed. So they're there, whether or not, you know, you're having a depressed sales, you still have to incur those costs. So when you have got those economic upheavals, you know, you have a margin squeeze. Before you know it, most dealers then start having problems. So I guess the point I'm trying to make here is that when sites or new dealers are asking for funding, emphasis should be made on, once you have dealt with the price of the site, the discussion about working capital should be extremely thorough. There should be more of an upside of, you know, contingency measures in relation to, you know, price turbulences. Again, we've had like 3 back-to-back prices just around COVID, while we have COVID-19. So, you know, those things affect the amount of money you need to repurchase a full load of fuel. So it's very, very important, particularly for new entrants that are not set for failure. The person could be genuinely capable in terms of acumen, as it was alluded to, in terms of, astute and everything. But if they do not know the possible downsides that can happen, particularly on the pricing side, in the shop, there isn't much that one is exposed to in terms of price turbulence. But on the forecourt side, I think, particularly from the funding standpoint, I think emphasis, if it could be made to understand and educate the new entrants about the risk relating to working capital. I'm going to pause here and ask for questions if there are any.
And just hitting on the question of funding as a barrier to entry, on our chat platform or the chat room, questions around, we always encourage for youth participation, saying that we are largely a young democracy with the at least half the population being under the age of 50 or so. And then in the same breath, we contradict ourselves and say we have opportunities, but yet capital is required for you to access that. How do we balance and manage those aspirations and expectations while we're dealing with the reality of, the sluggish economy and the hardships that we're facing?
Yeah, well, it's a tough one, Cindy. I think, look, I'm not sure whether I'm going to do justice to your question, but the fact of the matter is that if we want to increase the participation of other people in this economy, and we understand that the funding or access to capital has been and will continue to be a major barrier, we need to then take a clear decision that we cannot use the same instruments to actually analyze how there's supposed to be things like payback period. And for instance, I'll give an example. Quite often, the major banks, they'll say, if we give you 5 million, you must pay it in 5 years, or if you give it whatever. They basically, the lease period drives the repayment period. Now, that in itself, while I understand that there are these financial risk and they have to be prudent in terms of how they analyze this thing, but we also need to take a political decision and saying, am I being reasonable to say this? This person can pay back 15 million. If you look at the advertisement and some of the news sites, 15 million, the person retire or take a package from their work. Let's assume this is an entrepreneur who was previously working. They take a package. Remember, they can't throw everything because also there's a risk balance. So they take 2 million, they put it in the business, but they're still expected to repay within 5 years. And it is our opinion that in BP transformation that the 5 years repayment period, it's not necessarily ideal. Perhaps we should reconsider other, innovative ways. I don't have the answers, but I think it'll be, not realistic, because remember, in the 5 years, whether the site is in an area where there is high volume or not, the 5 years, the projections of the volumes will it's not often that they actually meet those projections. You reach plateaus. There are other issues during the economic life of that investment. So, and of course, coupled with the fact that this is a historically disadvantaged person have got other challenges. We are mindful of the fact that also some of the candidates, we are not a homogeneous group as historically disadvantaged. So in other words, there are people who tend to be a little bit extravagant and irresponsible. But our pushback is that quite often, sometimes oil companies tend to make a blanket statement that when there is one BE candidate who fails, then the presumption is that, oh no, he can't manage finance. And I think it's a bit unfair. That situation can prevail in any, whether you're black, white, red, or whatever. In any sample, there will be someone who would not necessarily meet the demand, the required dictates of how to perform in the business. So I'm not sure whether I'm answering your question, but I think it's a challenge that's out there.
Tony, thank you indeed for your time, and we do appreciate that you are not able to stay for the remainder of the 45 minutes or so that we have.
Yeah.
And this also means that we need to have another occasion where we can have webinars, if you like, and break down the components, in terms of how people can access those opportunities. So before you go, there's also been a question around the acronyms. And I guess if you're a participant or a key stakeholder in the space, you would know what QSR stand for. The other thing is NPV. We know NPA, we know Hawks, those ones are generic. We can flip. About QSR, about NPV.
Okay. I never use the NPV, but NPV is net present value. I think Mpo, who presented for DME, she's the one who spoke about that. What they tend to do in terms of a feasible site, whether you buy an existing or a new site, they will then analyze that site in terms of the net present value of the cash flows that they've got their own criteria. So in a nutshell, in terms of finance, that's what's the NPV is. But QSR is just a quick service restaurant. So in other words, if you have a Wimpy, and you can compare it with a BP Express or any other oil company, convenience store, the requirements of working capital there are not as stringent. So you're not exposed. Once you have an initial 3 or 500 or 400K that is your startup cost, as you move on, you only replenish, and your replenishment it's not as heavy as at a forecourt. Whereas at the forecourt, even if if your initial working capital was not properly calculated, if the DME announces R1 increase in the petrol, that doesn't mean that your margin is increased. It just means that you need to now buy the 1 liter at a price by extra R1, and nothing has changed. So it means that it could put a pressure on your account, and then if again the scenario I cited, then things go pear-shaped, and it's, oh, you see, she or he is not coping, particularly in respect of racial profiling, which I'm particularly very passionate about. That when we analyze the failure of a retailer, we need to put all the facts on the table to make sure that we are not just literally racial profiling and saying that all blacks are this and that and that.
All right, maybe that's where we're going to have to leave it. Thank you so much for your time. That's Mr. Tony Mokoka, Chairperson of the BP Dealer Council, talking about the best options in getting into the space. But I'm not going to surmise too much of what he had said. I think we can extend that train of thought to the Chairperson of the Engine Dealer Council, who's Mr. Stephen Pakisi. Thanks so much for your patience, and welcome to NEF Business TV, the Fuel Webinar. Thank you for your time, and you have 10 minutes. Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Cindy, and all the listeners. Yes, as just Cindy has said, my name is Stephen Pakisi. I have been requested to talk about the role of the council as a link between dealers and the oil company. So in this instance, I represent Engine. I think I'm the lucky one because I'm not going to say much. Tony has said a mouthful, so I'll just fill in where I feel necessary. So Dealer Council is basically a primary channel of communication between engine management and dealers pertaining to all matters related to fuel industry for mutual benefit of engine dealers and engine. Hence, those structures that Tony mentioned are very important and they should function properly. So in terms of the structures, we do have what we call a gap, which it basically a geographical area participation in which you would find that there is between 20 to 30 dealers meeting together with engine, discussing their issues. So the next one is a region where you find the region maybe involves about 5 gaps. And in that region, you would form what you call a regional advisory council, in which all the gap chairs sit together to discuss the issues. Over and above that, we do have National Advisory Council. In that, we have got a regional chairman sitting with ESCO, and that ESCO comprises of past chairman, current chairman, and a vice chairman. So out of that, as Tony said, we do form subcommittees in dealing with different categories of the business, which could be convenience, fuel deliveries, IT, and et cetera. So the regional council would then meet with engine, and it's a 3 month, it's every 3 months that we meet, so 3 meetings a year. And in that meeting, there is engine EXCO, NAC ESCO, all the regional chairs and engine managers, and any other person invited to present. So we also do discuss the financial models of the business, transformation, operating lease, and all that. And then over and above that, we do have an opportunity to interact with Mr. Sibia, FRA. As chairs, we do sit on the FRA board and discuss issues of the industry at large. So Cindy, I'm not gonna be long because I've also got to run out of time at the moment and I've got to run, yes.
Stephen, but I just wanted to in terms of the success rate, so that we encourage people, one, to participate in the sector, understanding that there has to be due diligence and compliance with the regulatory framework, that it's not an easy business. Like anything else in life, that doesn't come easy. It is doable, but how prevalent is the success rate, or rather failures, per racial profiling? And is this reflected fairly? Are the challenges different for different race groups in the retail sector, or is the environment skewed towards a particular racial profile? This is according to the questions on the chat group.
Yes, there is failures, and more especially, or unfortunately, on our Black brothers and sisters. And part of that prices, as Tony said, it's expensive business, and it requires a lot of cash flow and a good financial discipline, if I may so say. I don't know if I've answered the question correctly. You are muted, Cindy.
I beg your pardon. I think in the interest of time, that will be adequate, and we're hoping to have a follow-up webinar where we can explore in small bite sizes, and the issues around the fuel and retail fuel sector. But Stephen, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Colleagues and ladies and gentlemen, we still have the CEO of the Retail Fuel Association, Mr. Regis Sibia, and we have from Shell, Ntobeko is still with us, Sukiswa from Total, and all the previous speakers. It's just Tony and Stephen that had to excuse themselves. Now, the next segment is of particular interest to us here at the National Empowerment Fund, because this is where we can test that we live the values of empowerment, of motivation, ethics, and respect, and to enhance and grow individuals as investees. So these are not scripted. It is unauthored by ourselves. It's lived experiences of the investees who had entrusted us with their dreams and aspirations in the fuel sector. So it is my great pleasure and privilege to introduce the NEF investee testimonial from the Free State, and that would be Fikile Mapumula, who is a director with BP in Kwakwa. Fikile, hello to you and welcome. So the journey of the NEF, you're not being paid to say this, by the way. I think let's get it on the record that you weren't given words to say and to be kind about your personal experience with the NEF. But I think as a testimonial, it gives the authenticity of what it is that we do in growing Black economic participation. You have 10 minutes. May you please share your screen. If you do have a presentation, make sure that is also on widescreen mode. Hi, Figile.
Hi, Cindy. Thank you for the opportunity.
Hi.
Hi. It was quite a humbling request that NEF asked me, out of all the people, to come and share my journey. I think they know the challenges that I've been through, and they understand exactly what people need to hear. So my name is Figile. I'm a dealer and site manager for BP Kwakwa in Putadichaba, Free State. A short background. I applied to become a dealer in 2017. I was only handed over the site in 2019. So what happened in between was the application for the retail license, application for NEF funding, and also waiting for BP to renovate the site that has been closed for more than a year. And so I waited for BP to open the site, to renovate the site, so they can hand it over to me. So the journey started when BP appointed me as a dealer, and I approached NEF, and BP, they actually encouraged me to approach NEF because they have an agreement with NEF. And when I approached NEF in 2017, NEF unfortunately told me that they don't have budget because it was almost the financial year end of 2017. So then 2018 came and they assigned a particular individual within the company, Fatima, to help me with the application, which went very smoothly. I must say, Fatima held my hand and helped me throughout the application. She literally sat me down and told me the type of documents that are required, that need to be submitted, how they need to be submitted. So the process there was very, very helpful, and I'm very grateful to Fatima. Then I had to apply for a retail license. Applying for a retail license took over a year. And I think it's something that Department of Energy has to look into. It was merely inefficiency. I would be asked for the same document to be posted, couriered, emailed, and hand delivered more than 5 times. So that took a year to actually get a retail license. Then I waited for BP to renovate the site. And it also took more than a year for BP to renovate the site. So basically I took over a site that has been closed for more than a year. And in taking over the site, there were quite a number of challenges. If you don't know, Kwakwa, it was previously a homeland and currently a township area. So Kwakwa has its own challenges. Anyway, in May 2019, after being at home for 6 months, unemployed, waiting for BP to hand over the site, I finally took over a site that was half completed with the renovations. So that also posed challenges. So for the first 3 months, I ran a site without a generator. Any dealer or site manager will tell you a generator is one very important asset. But I must say, also, I need to mention that within the 6 months, while waiting for the site to be handed over, what I did during that time, which is very important, is to align myself with other site managers. I would visit other sites and request that the site managers show me their daily works, what they do on a daily basis. I aligned myself with people like Mama Lucia from BP Dobsonville, somebody who's well experienced, quite successful, and respected in the industry. I sat with her, I sat under her wing, and she taught me daily activities that happens on the site as a dealer and as a site manager. I went to other sites, Zubercom. You really have to expand and visit sites that are functioning, talk to the people, talk to the site managers, get to understand their daily activities, get to understand the challenges in the industry, especially if you're coming from corporate, you've never done this before, and you're just coming into the industry. It is not easy. It is very difficult. It is very demanding. And it is a type of work that you need to be hands-on. Once you see people who are in the industry being hands-on, you get to understand that when you get to a site, this is how you should behave. This is how you should handle your stuff. So I was very fortunate to actually visit those sites, be with those type of people, and seeing them doing the work. So use your time before the site is handed over to you. Use it to align yourself with the people who are in the industry and the people who know how to do the work. So in May 2019, when the site was handed over to me, half renovated by BP, I had to work with what I have. It's also important to realize that at times you will not get a fully functional site, but you need to get going, you need to work, you need to use what you have at your disposal and work with it. So we've had issues with services, as I mentioned before. We have load shedding more than 5 times a day. We stayed a year without water. So those are the challenges that I had to actually accept and live with them, and it was okay. But I must also emphasize that NEF, when I took over the site, NEF was there from day one. NEF appointed a counselor, NEF's team, the whole team, I don't know from which departments, but it was quite a number of people who came on site, who would always communicate with me, who would always ask Fikile, what is it that BP needs to do for you? What is it that is still outstanding? How do we get to BP? How do we make BP to actually help you? They were my team. They were the team that helped me to get BP to get going and deliver on what they're supposed to deliver, or all the outstanding issues with the renovations. So I'm very, very grateful to the NEF team. They also even appointed a mentor, somebody who came on site to mentor me, to show me how things were done and so forth. So it's one team that I would always be grateful for. They know the battles that we fought together. They were on my side. I always knew that if I call NEF, something will happen, or BP will have to listen. So so for the first 3 months after opening, I didn't have a generator. The electricity will go off during peak hours. That will be in the morning, during the day, and in the afternoon. However, we managed to work, and I hear a lot of 300,000 liters. The reality is, if you are starting a new site, or if you are taking over a site that has been closed, 300,000 liters per month, it's a dream. You have to work towards it. It's not something that will come in the first month, nor the 6th month. It's something that you work towards and aim to achieve. Yes, the 300,000 is an ideal, it's an ideal volume to have per month, but it's not easy. So you need to.
Fikile,
Yeah.
yes, thank you so much. You're truly an inspiration. Thank you also for appreciating the team in the Free State of the National Empowerment Fund. Entrepreneurs like yourself keep people and motorists on the road. Here at the NEF, we keep people in business. We strive to serve. So thank you so much for joining us. Still, please stay on. We still have a few moments in case there are questions from our panelists. So our next investee is from Limpopo, Mahadi Lihodi, who is a director for Engine Lamatseleng. Good afternoon to you, and thank you so much, Mahadi. If you give us your NEF experience, the journey that we've traveled with you, the experiences, and I'm afraid it's all of that has to be within 5 minutes. Your time starts now. Good morning, or good afternoon, rather.
Oh, thank you so much, Cindy. Can you hear me, Cindy?
Yes, we can hear you well. We'd love to see you if you don't mind. Re kopa ho bona tle bathong.
Ke etsa jwang hore e be kgolo?
Why is it saying the bottom left corner of your screen? Because le nna ba nthutile, so ke a bona ne. Bottom left, go na le microphone, and then the other thing, it's on a video camera.
Yes, I did. I actually opened it, but I get the screening as big, but I've.
Oh, okay. Well, ask the technical team for now. Maybe what you can do is just go ahead with your testimonial. Unfortunately, in the interest of time, we can't wait any longer.
Yes. Yes. Oh, there I am. Thank you so much, Cindy. I'm here. Wow, thank you for having me. And I firstly, I would like to say to Fikile, I'm listening to Fikile, and I feel like I was listening to somebody telling my life story, because she exactly walked my path. And you know, Fikile, I'm very proud of you, and we need to breed a lot of us in this industry. But in any case, my name is Mahadi. I am indeed working in Limpopo. I am the director at Engine Lamatseleng. I will not say a lot of things because all the other things that Fikile have said, I've been through them as well. But what I want to stress out is that when I took over Engine Lamatseleng, the conditions were exactly like that as well. It was a site that has been closed and not operating for a period of a year, and the renovations Engine had to do them. I also took it over before the renovations were done. But the difference, I'm not sure about Fikile's side, but let me say my side, one of the challenges that I experienced on my side, which was a big disadvantage, that, you know, when you talk to people, everybody keeps telling you that, how are you going to manage it? How are you going to manage it? The site is actually enclosed within buildings. The structure is so bad. I don't know, the planning was so bad that from the street, you can't even recognize my site at all. So I had to work very hard to make sure that people know me, we are visible to the cars that are passing by out beyond the building that is actually obscuring our view. But as I have to say, having a business, it's not about making money as such. I believe that I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs will agree or concur with me that one needs to have a much larger goal versus just having money. You must be inclusive in your goal, because I think one of my goals actually is the main goal that makes me wake up every morning, is to make sure that I change the perception about women. I change the perception about African women. I change the perception about how we do business. I want to say, I'm so proud of Figile, as I say, we can do it. Yes, I think it was in Tate, I can't remember, Ndate Tony. Ndate Tony was saying there is indeed, people must not believe that we should take away the perception and the stereotype that because somebody has failed, it's because it's a woman and it's a Black woman. But also some of us who are sitting in these positions must be able to work hard and understand, indeed, a filling station, it is not as rosy as it looks as you pass. We work hard. It is much harder. Before I took over the station in 2018, I had also done what Figile did. I went to different people who were operating. In some places, you will hear people telling you that a filling station is an easy business where you can operate it while you are at home. That is the biggest mistake you can ever do. You must always be on your side. Make sure that you know what is happening and wake up in the morning. At some point, be there at 5 o'clock in the morning and knock off when the shift change, because you need to know, and the people have to understand, that your employees have to understand what you are trying to achieve. And since I've actually taken over the station with the assistance of NEF, it has been an amazing road. You know, like the journey has had ups and downs, but yes, indeed, NEF held my hand, and they were there. You know, they were supporting me. My area manager and the engine, he was, you know, I remember we already had a burglary, and he was even there before I was there. It happened at night at about 5 o'clock in the morning. He arrived there before I arrived. So they were there to support us. Another thing is, with regard to that, I need to mention is with regard to NEF. NEF requirements, yes, indeed. I think the other thing that maybe people should also not forget is the fact that over and above your 20% or your 10% that they want you to contribute as an individual, they will also want you to give guarantees. There's over and above guarantees that you need to make sure that you have, especially something like you need to have an insurance in case you pass on, then you need to have money that will pay the debt. So you need a lot of money to get into these kind of deals. And entrepreneurs, especially young ones, I heard other individuals coming from oil companies saying, we want younger people. Yes, we want younger people, but where will they get the money to be able? Let's not give them a dream that will never come true. You know, let's say to them, start something. I started in business. I'm a pharmacist by profession. I started business because I didn't have enough cash, but I knew where I wanted to go. I started a traveling agency. I started with 1,000 rand, and I worked the 1,000 rand until I had enough money to be able to contribute to buy a filling station. So it's hard work and patience and perseverance that one needs. And I also have to mention that I'm very proud of the fact that we are now 31% of women successfully exit their loan agreements with NEF. So my contribution is that continue trusting us. And for those women and for those younger ones that I said it is hard, the more you exercise patience and discipline, the closer you get towards your dream. It is not difficult, it is not impossible. We are here, you can get here too. But yes, I work very hard. My day started about 5 o'clock. I have to look at the report whilst I'm at home, because then they would have sent me some report at 6 o'clock. And I check the reports, then I go to the site and I make sure that my footprint is felt on my site. And I enjoy what I'm doing every day. But I'm also not in a hurry, I guess. I know Figile said 300,000 liters is a dream. It is indeed. Getting there, and when you hear people saying this site is pumping 300, it means these people have worked very hard. And yes, we have managed to grow our volumes. Our sales have grown from nothing because it was a closed site to our volumes are now about 480. And it's motivating. Also, getting the correct staff members. Your staff should be aligned to your dream. And as I said, let your dream be bigger than just making money. Let it be, my dream is, let me change lives. Let me show people that we can be able to do it. So I don't really have a lot of things, as I said. I think Fikile covered a lot of other issues that I would have wanted to talk about. But thank you very much for having me. And thank you to NEF and to Engine for trusting me that I can be able to do this. I don't do this alone. I have a site manager. I'm on the overseer, though I'm there all the time. But I have a site manager, and I train the site manager myself because I wanted to learn with her. And she's also a woman, and she's doing extremely well. So thank you very much. I think I'm going to end my presentation here.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate, Mahadi. We're so humbled, even by your generosity in spirit with Figile, the camaraderie that you're showing. And this is part of the culture of the NEF. You know, when one rises, you also pull somebody else up. The honesty that you've also expressed, because this is how we can improve our service offering by having investees come back to say, in this area, I feel that, you know, you could have assisted more. You mentioned the mentorship, because indlela ibuzwa kulaba abayaziyo. Okay, so if you haven't, nobody has shown you an example of a successful Black woman running a petroleum station, you would think that this is something that is the privy of other people. So you've given us the sense of hope that is tangible, that it is possible to dream. Once you apply yourself and you're willing to put the hard work, it will pay off. So we want to say that if you want to go far, you go with the NEF. So to both of you, thank you. We wish you much success, and may you multiply all the efforts and also rewards and good fortune that you have. We're going to have to leave it there. Folks, thank you again for all our participants across the various social media platforms. We were oversubscribed by thousands of interested applicants, and we even extended this webinar by an hour just to cover as much of a wide scope as we possibly can. We will attempt to bring other webinars in a specific sector to then hopefully work through the various aspects of what your concerns are. The questions and answers we have on the Zoom platform will be posted, or the response will be posted on our website. And to all our panelists and the speakers, our strategic partners, the oil majors, the Department of Energy. I know Paul had sent an email and she apologizes that the network was intermittent. So we've had that challenge as well from the speakers generally, as we experienced here as well. So we hope you found this of value. As they say, if you were blessed by this message, hit us up on social media, give us your contact details, let's engage and see how we can widen the opportunity of growing Black economic empowerment. You've been watching the NEF Business TV, and this is the fuel sector. Thank you so much. I'm your host, Cindy Mabi. It's been a great privilege and honor. And thank you to the technical crew and all our colleagues who assisted in making this webinar possible. May you be abundantly blessed, and let's continue to engage on social media. That is the National Empowerment Fund on Facebook, and at NEF Core, CORP on Twitter. Thank you so much for your time. Cheers.